MRS podcast. This is podcast number 7. And if you're just finding this video in your YouTube feed, I am making a series of podcasts for my old friends from college, Maiden, Rob, and Sparky. That's the title, MRS podcast. So since the last podcast, it has become very obvious to me that, I made episode number 3, and that was about the free press. And I feel like I made very little progress in terms of waking you guys up to what's going on with regards to how controlled our free press is. So just to refresh your memory, going back to MRS podcast number 3, that one was about the free press. And in that one, we had, a video clip of the church committee hearings back in, I believe it was the 70s, where they had Alan Dulles testifying in front of the Congress, and they asked him, "Hey, do you have any CIA agents working in American journals?" And he said, "Yes, we do." And then they asked him about TV and radio, and he said, "Well, I think this is the kind of getting into the details that we want to get into in executive session. In other words, I don't want to stand here and lie under oath because I'd be committing perjury, and I sure as hell don't want to tell the American public the truth about what we're doing with their TV news and, that sort of thing." So just to give you guys some recent examples of, you know, controlled press, you know, I brought up on text message earlier this morning that, Tucker Carlson, who is very widely followed, even though Maiden hates his guts, he is extremely well followed. Um, he's got, I think he got 250 million views on his interview with Donald Trump on the night of the Republican debates. And I haven't checked. Maybe it's even more now. It might be up to 260 or 270. But right now he's got 35 million views on this whistleblower who is stepping forward to say, "Yeah, I had sex with Obama twice, and we had cocaine together." And it's, to me, that's newsworthy. That's a newsworthy story. Whether you believe the guy has credibility or whether you don't believe the guy has credibility, that's a newsworthy story, just that Tucker Carlson would platform this guy, okay? Because he's got massive amounts of following. And so far, there's only been, that I can find on my Google search, one mainstream article addressing this, and that was out of The Guardian, which is out of the UK. In the entirety of the US mainstream corporate news, none of them have touched this story. They haven't run their standard, "Oh, this is just, conspiracy nonsense." They haven't, tried to come in and discredit the messenger. They've just maintained absolute radio silence. And I don't see how you guys can believe that that is possible in a free press. ABC News hasn't touched it. NBC News hasn't touched it. CBS News hasn't touched it. CNN hasn't touched it. No one has touched this story. It's already been almost a week ago, and no one has run an article about it. So how does that happen when we have a free press? And, we saw the same exact thing happen after the still won 2020 elections. Now, I know Maiden is one of those conservatives, and there's a lot like him that, will shrug their shoulders and say, "Yeah, there was some cheating that went on, but this goes on in every election." No, this one, in my opinion, was very, very different. They're putting up paper in the windows of the Michigan Count Center. They're fabricating busted water mains at the Atlanta Count Center. There were problems all over that entire election that, we haven't seen in our lifetimes. And so to just shrug your shoulders and say, "Well, there's election fraud that goes on in every election," it doesn't resonate with me, not after what I saw. I believe it was Stalin who said, "I don't give a damn who votes. All I care about is who counts the votes." He didn't say that exact phrase, but I think there's a phrase that's very along those lines that was attributed to him. But the reason I bring that up, those stolen elections, is that, throughout the entirety of the corporate mainstream press, aside from maybe one or two hosts on the Fox News channel, there was no questioning that election. None. And what they did come out was they just regurgitated the phrase baseless conspiracy theories, over and over and over again. And, I just, and then with the January 6th thing, once again, it's one narrative and one narrative only. Those people were trying to overthrow our government. No, if they were trying to overthrow the government, they would have brought guns. Nobody brought, it was grandmas. And, but there is just one narrative that comes out of this corporate mainstream press that we are led to believe, we're supposed to believe that it's a free press. Well, in my mind, nothing free about it whatsoever. Now, I do think that they're able to program us, and I think it happens on a subconscious level, and we don't even realize it's taking place. So I do know that when that election was originally stolen back in 2020, I think Sparky totally saw it, and he understood it's a stolen election. But recent text messages have made me think that maybe he's kind of more along the lines of the Mike Maiden camp. And the reason I think that that is going on, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Sparky, maybe you do realize that election was completely stolen, and maybe that's where you're at right now. But the reason I would surmise that you are leaning towards there's election fraud in all elections is, I'm going to say it, you watch CNBC all day long. And I don't want you to think that that's a put down that they programmed you, because I think I was programmed, and I probably still am, and I just don't realize it. I think we're all programmed. But the CIA has been studying this kind of shit for decades, and I think they've pretty much perfected it. I think they've had it perfected for a very long time. Right after that JFK assassination, um, no one would bring that assassination up in polite conversation. And even to this day, I think they've got us programmed a different way now. And I brought this up on text message with you guys recently. But if somebody mentions, oh, I got cancer, or my cousin has cancer, or somebody died, uh, no way in hell would anybody follow that up with, oh, was that person, did they take the COVID vaccine? You just wouldn't do it. It's not something that we would do. And I think that's because of the programming. And I think the assumption would be, well, you must be an anti-vaxxer, otherwise you wouldn't be asking that questions, because a lot of the anti-vaxxers thought that everybody who took the vaccine is going to wind up getting sick and dying. And it could also be that, I think maybe on a subconscious level, everybody in, 1963, 64, 65, 66 in the United States, they all pretty much knew that they'd been lied to on that JFK assassination, and they just didn't want to admit it to themselves, and so therefore they didn't want to talk about it. And I think maybe that could be also part of this subconscious programming where we just don't ask about somebody's vaccination status after they die or announce that they've got cancer. And you guys are free to prove me wrong. Next time somebody mentions that they've had somebody near them, or they have cancer, or someone's died, just ask the question, were they vaccinated for COVID? You won't do it. It'd be so awkward. Nobody in the right mind would do it. And I guarantee you guys will not do that. And that's because they've programmed us one way or another. I don't know how they did it, but they've got us programmed. And I will point out that in 2021, it was absolutely, totally acceptable to ask that question. Millions of Americans were asking that question. Hey, did you take it? And if you didn't, you're not welcome here to my house for Thanksgiving dinner. That was going on. And, I wasn't even allowed to get a haircut here in Puerto Rico because I didn't take it. And, I was able to get a haircut because I had a vaccine control group card that said do not vaccinate. And my barber accepted that. But I wasn't supposed to be able to get a haircut throughout most of 2021 here in Puerto Rico. So just to refresh your memory, going back to MRS podcast number 3, that one was, again, it was about the free press, and we played a clip about how all the different various local news affiliates were reciting the same exact propaganda. And it didn't matter if it was CBS or Fox or ABC or any of them, they were all doing the same thing. So whether you watch national news or local news, you're being propagandized. And here's another video clip. I'll play this one for you right now.
The sharing of biased and
false news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish things that simply aren't true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
And so, whether you watch if you watch the national news, you're definitely propagandized. But even if you just watch the local news, you're being propagandized. I think that's very clear and obvious from that video clip that I just played. But apparently, all these efforts to shake you guys and jar you guys into waking up on this control system that is in place with the free press, I feel like I've made no progress, at least with Maiden especially. Now, if I had to stack rank all three of you guys, I think Rob is probably the most suspicious of our free press. I think Sparky is right behind him. And then Maiden, I don't think that he questions anything that is presented to him on the quote-unquote free U.S. corporate. So I've shown you how, Bill O'Reilly invited Jim Fetzer onto his show, And the entire purpose of that entire appearance on Fox News was so that Bill O'Reilly could discredit Jim Fetzer and not let him talk and make any of his points. He even admitted during the interview, I'm not going to let you talk because you're crazy. I mean, I can't believe these tactics work, and I'm trying to point it out to you guys, but I just don't know that I'm making any progress. You know, it seems like every time I bring up a source that is not, mainstream corporate news, such as Alex Jones or, this whistleblower that Tucker interviewed that says he has gay sex with the former president. You know, I don't know. You guys always shout, he's just an attention whore. He's just trying to get views. He just wants attention. You guys always say that every time. It's all like a broken record. But, that guy that it went on the record with Tucker and said he had gay sex with Obama, I would not be surprised at all to find out that he dies of something in the next few months. I wouldn't be surprised at all. It's the same way with Joan Rivers. As soon as she said, everybody knows that Michelle Obama is a tranny. I mean, she was dead within 6 months, I believe it was.
Country will see the United States will see the first gay president or the first woman president?
We already have it with Obama, so let's just calm down.
Got it.
You know Michelle is a trans.
I'm sorry, she's a what?
A transgender. We all know.
Oh my gosh.
Oh gosh. It's okay. She does this.
So, yeah, it's almost as if you guys believe that if there was a conspiracy, the independent investigative journalists that work for these corporate mainstream news sources would actually go, do what they called gumshoe reporting and actually go interview people and ask questions. No, that doesn't go on. It doesn't go on at all. I think the last time we actually had a real conspiracy, reported on by the mainstream corporate news was Naira on 60 Minutes. I'm going to play a little clip here just to refresh your memory on that one.
Chairman and members of the committee, my name is Naira, and I just came out of Kuwait. While I was there, I saw the Iraqi soldiers come into the hospital with guns. They took the babies out of the incubators, took the incubators, and left the children to die on the cold floor. It was horrifying.
Naira was testifying before the Congressional Human Rights Caucus, but in fact, she was testifying before the American people, and her story mesmerized the nation and the world.
Thrown out of the incubators.
President Bush repeated the incubator story at least 10 times in the following weeks.
Babies pulled from incubators and scattered like firewood across the floor.
You went to investigate.
Yes, we did.
You went to Saudi, and then after the liberation of Kuwait, you went to Kuwait.
Correct.
What did you find?
We went straight to the hospitals. We were particularly concerned with going to the maternity hospital at the Al Sabah complex. This is the largest hospital in the country, and it's a hospital that has perhaps a half to two-thirds of all the incubators in the country.
Did Iraqi soldiers remove babies from incubators in order to steal the incubators?
No, they did not. Not at all.
Now, I do think that, with this story, if 60 Minutes wouldn't have run that story and exposed it, the Alex Jones and the Stu Peters of the world, they'd be telling you, hey, look, this girl that testified before the Congress, she was the daughter of the Kuwaiti ambassador to the United States, and she was trained at this Hilton and Knowles acting firm. And here's the proof of it. And they'd show you that, but you guys wouldn't see it because you won't listen to them. It's amazing. But I do think that if the corporate mainstream news was still insisting that babies were removed from incubators and left on the cold floor to die, if that was the official story coming out of the mainstream corporate news, that's what you guys would believe. So anyway, I'm going to go back to the day after September 10th. I'm 15 minutes into this now, so I'm trying to get this thing over with. But I'm just going to show you guys a little clip of Donald Rumsfeld late in the day. We got less than 24 hours of news cycle to go before the big event the next morning on the day after September 11th. And this is Donald Rumsfeld admitting that they've lost $2.3 trillion. What a convenient time to drop this bomb on the American public when there's less than 24 hours of news cycle to go before the big event happens the next morning.
We are, as they say, tangled in our anchor chain. Our financial systems are decades old. According to some estimates, we cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions.
So there you have it. Donald Rumsfeld dropping a bombshell on the American public. We've lost $2.3 trillion late in the day on September 10th, the day before the big event, and less than 24 hours of news cycle for them to deal with before the big event the next morning. Now, I know you guys are just going to shout coincidence because that's what you guys do, but it's just another coincidence in a long, long string of coincidences that we're finding on the day after September 10th. Thanks for listening, guys. Send me a message. Let me know what you think about today's podcast, and we'll see you next time.
Lights, 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 yeah. Lights, 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 yeah. Lights, 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 yeah. Lights, 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 yeah. Do I have